All Blacks and Los Pumas, Argentina in the Tri-Nations 2020. It's a bit of a rematch. It's been certainly getting a bit of big billing here over in New Zealand. I will go over the teams. I'll put them in the description as well so you guys can have a look. There's a few changes, especially on the Argentinian side. The predictions, the recent history, some of the key stats, and yeah, you guys can let me know how you think this one is going to go down. Now, interestingly, with last week's draw between Argentina and Australia, it's kind of left the door open. We've had a look at the table, and yeah, that result seems to have been a pretty good one, actually, for New Zealand, in terms of all teams now being on 6 points. So the All Blacks are still in first, despite having just the one win and the 2 losses, but it was a pretty big win that they had, which has actually left the door slightly ajar for the All Blacks to maybe put their foot through. But the Pumas, if they can go and win 2 from 2, stay undefeated. You never know, man. They could be lifting the Tri-Nations for the first time in their history. But yeah, I think, at least from a New Zealand perspective, the narrative is certainly about maybe a little bit of revenge after that first ever loss. They've had a whole week to think about this. Meanwhile, the Pumas guys have had to keep playing. And yeah, from an Argentinian perspective, man, they are undefeated after 2 rounds, which is, I think, more than anyone expected of them. And they've set this standard, and they'll want to keep going at it. So there's no reason for them to drop in their performance levels. In terms of the Argentinian squad, as I mentioned, they've made a bunch of changes, and essentially, man, they're playing 4 matches in a row, which you generally only do at World Cup time. So it's an unusual situation, and they are having to rotate their squad, I guess, to keep guys fresh and to give guys who've been sitting on the sidelines a bit of a run. They've changed both the props of Vivas and Medrano are the guys who will start this week. Vivas is starting ahead of Teta Chaparro, who drops to the bench, and Medrano starts ahead of Cordero, who is out of the 23, and it is Sordoni who was on the bench for this one. Montoya continues on. He's been phenomenal. His work at the breakdown and his just work rate in general has been awesome. So yeah, it's been interesting watching his career, because so often for the Jaguares and for Argentina, he's been behind Kremer, the bigger name guy, but for quite a while I think he's maybe been the better player. So it's really good to see him get a chance to shine. Petti continues on in the second row, and I still rate him as one of the best locks in the world. But Lucas Paulos, who is relatively inexperienced, comes in to start, so he replaces Alemano, who drops to the bench. Matera and Kremer are still there as the flankers, and those guys have been as key to the Pumas' success in this tournament so far as anybody. No one will question Matera's leadership. He has been absolutely the epitome of an inspirational captain, and Kremer has just been an absolute monster of a tackling machine. So I think he's second only to Michael Hooper in terms of tackles. He's been massive. Ezcurra, interestingly, gets the start at 9 ahead of Medrano, who is on the bench. That's a bit of an interesting change because he's the less experienced of the guys. I don't even think he came off the bench last week. Sanchez has been inspirational. I think he scored all the Pumas points. He starts at 10, kind of to be expected. It's a whole new midfield, though. De La Fuente, who is a really experienced campaigner. I really rate that guy. Like, he's not maybe as flashy as some of the other guys, but he's just consistently good. Every aspect of his game is really good. He's kind of like, reminds me of kind of Ryan Crotty. He's not like a real sexy, big tackle busting or Sonny Bill Williams crazy offloading style player, but he is just consistent in all areas. So he's going to be a good partner for Mallia, who is there at 13. I think he's only played 1 test. It's not many anyway. I think he got a game at the World Cup in that final game against America, where the Argentinians had their best game of the tournament and really cut loose. I think he's like 24, but in terms of international experience, he's relatively inexperienced. So Chocobares and Orlando are out of the 23 for this one. They get a break. Cordero and Moyano are the wingers. 2 very good wingers to have, man. It speaks to the depth in Argentinian rugby right now that you can drop him off and give him a rest. You can drop Dalgi and give him a rest, and have 2 equally dangerous guys in Cordero and Moyano. Moyano has been one of my favorite guys for such a long time because he's a guy when you watch him on TV, you can't quite believe what he's doing because he doesn't look that quick, but he runs the most amazing lines that seems to, I don't know, like his brain must just have like a quick fire plan that sees the optimal route to run, and he just manages to find it and just glides beyond defenders. He's not out and out pace, but he will find gaps in the defence if you give him one. And Boffelli steps up from the bench to go to fullback. I would have thought he would have been called on to do some long distance kicking, but Sanchez has been doing that as well. I never knew he quite had that distance in him. So yeah, that's the starting 15. Socino's still there on the bench. Tetes Chaparro, Sodoni, as I mentioned, Alemano. Grondona continues on the bench as like the flank cover. Butrano, as I mentioned, Carreras, and Mensah steps up into the team with Imhoff being out, Cordero being up. So yeah, he is acting as the cover there. So quite a few changes. The key guys, like the really experienced guys in Montoya, in Matera, Kremer, Sanchez, like those guys are unchanged. That kind of core of the team. But they've made changes elsewhere, either bench or from outside the 23. For the All Blacks, it's a fair bit more consistent. Moody and Coles are still 1 and 2. Laulala and Lomax swap places at tight head. Scott Barrett comes in to the 23, so he starts ahead of Tuipulotu, who's down to the bench, and Tupovai is out of the 23. Sam Whitelock continues on. A big call in Akira Ioane. He gets his second test, starting from the number 6 jersey. So Frizzell has dropped out of the 23. I think that's a good call, personally, because Akira, although he didn't get many minutes because of that red card in that last game he played, he wasn't the one who got the red card, remember? He was just substituted because of the red card. He looked pretty good, didn't he? He looked sharp, so let's hope he's fired up for this one. Kane is still captain at 7, and Savia is at 8. Smith and Moonga, 9 and 10. Goodhue and ALB, kind of consistent midfield there. Clark gets another run. Geordie Barrett. Clark's actually coming for a bit of criticism, maybe because he had like a pretty good debut from the bench where he looked impressive, and then he had an absolutely like phenomenal game over in Auckland where he just cut the Wallabies defenders to bits. But he's been pretty well contained after that. So people are starting to question. And people are pretty fickle. Like after one game, he's the next John Olomu, and then a few weeks later, does he deserve the number 11 jersey for the All Blacks? So people are pretty quick to judge. But I mean, if he's drawing in 2 tacklers because he is a dynamic runner, then they need to look at guys getting in support lines for him. Because if he's going to do what Sonny Bill used to do and be able to draw in 2 tacklers, he needs to be able to give the ball away and make space for somebody else. Geordie Barrett continues on the right wing. Talked a little bit in the pre-match stuff about his big boot also maybe being useful. So I would say, Geordie Barrett's got a few more meters on his boot than Moonga, who's 10. And I'm assuming Boffelli's got a few more meters in his boot than Sanchez. But as I said, Sanchez has been kicking him from pretty far. And Bodie continues on at 15. The media is really hammering Ian Foster about the Moonga and Barrett combo. But he's given it another crack. The bench, Taylor, Tui Nukuafe, so Hodgman is out. Lomax, as I mentioned, swaps place with Laulala. Tuipulotu, as I mentioned, he's down from the starting team. So Tutu continues on. Perenara comes in for Weber. Rico Ioane is still there. And Will Jordan comes in for Damian McKenzie. So, yeah, more changes to the bench than anything for the All Blacks. Seems like Ian is looking to inject a bit of something later in the game. But yeah, man, it's all on. Should be a pretty massive game. Really looking forward to it. You look at the last game they played, and I think everyone, well, not everyone, but at least a lot of pundits, and me personally, I was expecting the Argentinian defense to kind of tire and to wear out over the course of 80 minutes. But man, they didn't. And there was those Twitter videos about the Argentinian guys training during lockdown. Their fitness level seemed to be there, man. In the game against the All Blacks, they tackled at 90%, which is phenomenal in Test rugby. And then a week later against the Wallabies, they were still at 88%. So I don't think this is an Argentinian lineup that you can expect to tire and just leave gaps. They're going to be there for the 80 if what we've seen thus far is anything to go by. I mean, they made 152 tackles in that game against the All Blacks. I mean, the All Blacks tackled at 90% as well, but they only made 105, so like a third less than the Argentinian guys. So They were doing the business. And, I mean, the All Blacks' hands let them down. The All Blacks were not clinical. They were under pressure, 7 knock-ons to like 2 from Argentina. I think turnovers conceded, what was the total? It was like 14-4. You can't be doing that, man. And that Argentinian defense was putting people under heaps of pressure. So it's a team built on defense, and the All Blacks are going to have to find a way to unlock it. Whereas the Argentinian guys are going to hope, I guess, that despite all the changes, the chemistry in the team remains the same, and they still trust the guy outside them to make the tackle. They don't leave the All Blacks that space. If they can, they've proven it, man. If they can keep their defensive effort high, their kicking is phenomenal. Like the Hawaras used to do it as well. You wouldn't think about it, but I remember looking at their stats. They kicked kick meters more than any other team in Super Rugby. That was their way. Their run meters were never huge, but man, it's effective. You don't need to be running all the way up the field. Discipline's obviously going to be important. A fair bit made of that. Both sides wanting to keep their cool. The penalty count in the last game between these two teams was pretty high. 13 All Blacks, 16 Argentina. So, yeah, neither side. I mean, any game where it's almost 30 penalties, that's a pretty high penalty count. So they'll want to keep that down. But yeah, I don't know. There's a bit of talk about whether Maradona's death is going to inspire the Argentinian guys. I can't really comment about that. Obviously, the guy is a legend, and I'm not sure. I'm assuming it just crosses the sporting codes because he is such a big name. I could imagine if an former All Black had passed away, that would be inspirational just in terms of sporting stuff generally in New Zealand. So I don't know how much of a factor that's going to be. Argentinian guys will have to let us know what they reckon, but it's certainly something else to consider. They've got the competition on the line. Why not, man? Why not? Last 5. It's 4-1 in favour of the All Blacks. But importantly, that most recent one is that Pumas win. 15 points for the All Blacks, 25 for the Pumas. So that is going to be very squarely on the mind of all Blacks fans, and no doubt the All Blacks squad, but they will be looking to make amends over those last 5. I mean, the average score is 30-18. So the All Blacks have been traditionally pretty comfortable winners over the Pumas, but the last 2, I think it was a 4-point win to the All Blacks and a 10-point loss. So the Pumas side, and I mentioned about the depth of some of these guys they can bring in. It's really there, it's just quite pleasing to see. In terms of the predictions, the bookies over here in New Zealand have got the All Blacks by 17 points. And you got to believe, in terms of the way the competition is at 6 points apiece, the All Blacks will be chasing a bonus point. Obviously, they have to win. And if it gets crunch time, they'll take points. But if they get ahead, I think they surely chase the bonus point. Because that would put them pretty hard to catch, given how tight the game was last week between the Wallabies and the Pumas. Rugby forecast algorithms also pretty similar. It says New Zealand by 16 points. So, yeah, traditional history would tell you that New Zealand by 16 or 17 is probably fair. But remember, that one last result was totally the other direction. So, yeah, you guys let me know what you reckon. Do you think the Pumas can back up a 3rd week in a row? Do you think all the changes will bring some fresh energy to the side, or do you think the changes may be a little bit disruptive? The All Blacks, do you like the changes they've brought in? Would you like to have seen some other guys maybe get a chance? Are you happy with Akira, who gets a shot in the 6th jersey? But, yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you again soon. See you later. Remember, guys, if you haven't sorted out how you're going to watch the game, there's still 2 games left, and we're already a bunch of games in. ESPN Plus shows the Rugby Championship Tri-Nations for $6 American a month, which is a pretty sweet deal. Over here in New Zealand, you don't have access to this ESPN.com/ESPN Plus. However, if you're in America, you do. So lucky you to all you American guys. But if you use a VPN and connect to an American server, you are quite happy or capable to sign up from any location. So you can see here, I mean, they've got the Pro 14 if you wanted to watch that as well, but they've got upcoming games, Argentina versus New Zealand Rugby Championship on ESPN Plus, and they've got it in Spanish, which is pretty helpful if you're a Spanish speaker and looking to get a hold of the tournament as well. And also, helpfully, they do show the games on demand as well. So if you missed the Pumas against the Wallabies draw last week, or if you missed that historic win, Pumas against the All Blacks from the week before, you can watch those games on demand as well. It's a pretty good service, works pretty well. I'll chuck the link to the VPN in the description. It's definitely worth a crack because they do like a 30-day money-back guarantee. So even if you try it and it doesn't work for you, you can just get your money refunded. But I mean, like I said, I've used it before. Used it for Super Rugby AU and for Aotearoa. You can use it for this. Works pretty well, guys. Link in the description for the VPN if you want to check that one out. If you've already got a VPN, then just give your one a crack. Connect to an American server. But yeah. You guys take care. I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.